What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's transfer tips ahead of game week 6. So as always, we're going to look at some of the popular transfers in and out and talk about whether they are good moves or not. And of course, after the aftermath last night of Erling Haaland getting his second hat-trick in a row, we have to start with Harry Kane. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you're new around here as well. What should Harry Kane owners do? Now, if you're in a situation where you own both Kane and Haaland, that probably feels quite nice right now. Erling Haaland obviously an absolute machine, already got the 9 goals, 1 assist, and Harry Kane's got Fulham at home. So you probably just keep both. This conversation is more for Harry Kane owners that don't have Haaland, that are thinking about moving him on, and 100,000 managers have already sold him this week. And I think it's a really tricky situation. I feel like a lot of Kane owners probably feel like they're trapped, right? I don't think Harry Kane is a trap, but they feel trapped because they want to make the move, but it never feels like the right time. And to be fair, Harry Kane and even Mo Salah as well, they've both got 5 attacking returns in the first 5 games. That's pretty nice consistency, and they're players that can keep that up for a large majority of the season. It just so happens that in that same time, Haaland has got 10 returns, right? So the only, in my opinion, the only reason you would move Kane to Haaland this week is if you are absolutely sure that Haaland starts, because Fulham at home is such a good fixture. Now, the other issue is, of course, price rises as well. Haaland's gone up in price again. Harry Kane may or may not fall again before the deadline, and suddenly the gap in price is like 0.6, 0.7 million. So that might become an issue at some point. But for this week only, I think you just have to decide whether Haaland started. Now, my opinion is there's a good chance that he's benched this week. I say that as an owner, and for what it's worth, right now, I'm probably going to captain Salah again because of that. I know, obviously, caught up in the excitement last night, Haaland has to be permanent captain. It doesn't matter if he doesn't play because he can come off the bench and do something. But realistically, if you genuinely think a player is going to be benched, you should not be captain them, right? So I'm probably going to go for Salah. So because of that, I do think there's a high chance that Haaland is benched. The only thing in the back of my mind is, once again, Man City and Pep were able to bring him off early. He only played 68 minutes. I'm not sure if he even had to really break a sweat, right? It wasn't really a high-intensity game. Man City had the ball for a large majority of it, and Alvarez also played 90 minutes, right? Now, you can frame that in 2 different ways. You can say, well, he played 90, he's definitely missing the next game, which means Haaland's going to start. I think Man City could play with like a false 9, like De Bruyne or Foden or Mahrez or Bernardo Silva or Gundogan. Any of their players are good enough under Pep to play that number 9 role, but because it's a slightly different way of playing this year, I don't think Pep is going to go too many games where either Haaland or Alvarez isn't playing the number 9. So you could look at it as, and I know he didn't play there last night, but when Haaland doesn't play, that's probably where he's going to play, right? So you could look at it and say, well, 90 minutes means he's going to get rested, but you could frame it a different way and say, well, Alvarez needed the minutes, right? He's also young. There's no reason why he now can't play that next game as well and rest Haaland. So I'm not saying, again, 100% that he will miss out, but I think the likelihood of him missing this game is higher than the one against Nottingham Forest. For Nottingham Forest, they played Saturday, then they had Sunday, Monday, Tuesday off, and obviously then they played Wednesday, so 3 days off. With the Wednesday game, I think they're playing, let me just double check. Yeah, they're playing on, oh no, wait, that's game week 8. Let me see game week 6. Yeah, they're still playing on Saturday. So they've played Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off, then they play Saturday. Now, it is the evening game. They don't have to play at 12:30 like Liverpool, so that might help a bit, but not enough, especially with Champions League next. So my personal opinion is, there's a higher chance this week of him being benched than there was against Nottingham Forest, and therefore I probably wouldn't do the Kane to Haaland move. And then the reason that I say it feels like you're trapped is then you get to game week 7, and obviously Man City away is not a good fixture for Harry Kane, but obviously Haaland's playing Spurs, so it's not an easy fixture for him either. And we've seen Spurs do well against Man City in the past as well, like past couple of seasons. And Kane's been involved in the goals and the assists and stuff like that. So you could then look to keep him that week. And then you get to game week 8, bear in mind some people are going to wildcard in game week 9. Well, Harry Kane has Leicester at home, and in that same week, Haaland has Wolves away. Now, again, if you think Haaland's definitely going to start that game, that might be a switch worth making. But Leicester at home is a pretty good fixture. So it could even be the case, if you're going to wildcard in game week 9 and you're a Harry Kane owner, There is scenarios where you just keep him the whole way through, but I do think long-term, Haaland is just the better option. Like Kane's underlying numbers, 0.63 expected goals per 90, 0.17 expected assists per 90, really good. Those numbers are up on last year. Salah, as I've discussed, right, his numbers are pretty much identical to last year. These two players are going to get plenty of points. Erling Haaland, though, his numbers are up on the Bundesliga. He's getting an expected goals per 90 more than one, right? He's an absolute machine. So long-term, he is the best option, but I think there are scenarios where Kane owners maybe go without for the next few weeks, at least for game week 6. If you want to get Haaland in for Spurs at home and then Wolves away in game week 8, nothing wrong with that at all. But I think for this week, there's a good chance he is benched. Alvarez plays again. They obviously put someone else on the right. Mahrez could even be Foden or someone like that as well. And then Harry Kane has that good fixture against Fulham at home. So I know it's very scary to do that after Haaland's just got back-to-back hat-tricks. But I think with the fixture and with everything else we know, I think Harry Kane's a fairly good hold this week. Just don't come to me if it doesn't work out again. I'll just apologise in advance. Right, stop selling Reece James. 330,000 transfers out. I know he's still flagged, but he's back in training. There's no reason to make an early transfer. I'll tell you right now, anyone that got rid of James last week either had a plan to get him back this week if he was fit, or they are regretting the fact that they didn't have a plan to get him back, which is basically my position. I feel like I maybe made a little bit of a mistake with my transfers, not necessarily selling him, but not leaving a position to bring him back this week. And I think West Ham at home is a pretty good fixture, and then Fulham away is pretty decent for Reece James as well. I mean, Mitrovic and co could cause them some problems, and I know Chelsea defence hasn't been great, and a lot of people are thinking about getting off of it, and that's fair enough. But Kovacic has had a couple of games now, so you would hope soon that he gets up to the point where he can start, and that will definitely help Chelsea. Also, the transfer window hasn't shut yet. We should definitely keep an eye on that before we make any transfers, because I'm sure Chelsea are going to be looking to bring in another midfielder because they need some reinforcement there as well. So that could help. Fofana's also signed, so that kind of does two things to Chelsea. One, it makes their defence better, you would imagine, right? I think they're going to go back to playing 3 at the back more games than not. They have played a back 4 in a couple of games. Hasn't really worked out. So Fofana's going to come in that right centre-back position. We've got Thiago Silva in the middle, who just seems to play loads of games, even with his age, right? He just seems like a bit of a machine in that regard. Koulibaly left centre-back, so that should make them stronger, but also it means Reece James is going to play right wing-back way more often than not. We shouldn't see too many games now where he plays right centre-back, and he is absolutely brilliant when he plays in that position for both defensive and also attack and returns. We've already seen it plenty of times this season, so you need to wait for news from Tuchel. If he says James is available, you've got to keep. The fixture this week is good. The fixture next week is decent. Okay, Liverpool at home in game week 8 is not great, but if you didn't make that decision to sell him in game week 5, I just don't see why you would do it this week. So 330,000 managers have already done it. Don't be the next one. Wait to see what Tuchel says. If he says he's not available, then missing game week 6 and also having Liverpool in game week 8 and possibly wildcard in game week 9 would probably make Reece James a sell. But if he's available this week, I would want him in my side, and I'm going to regret not having him, I think. So I've seen a lot of claims this week that Alexander Mitrovic is now fixture-proof, and this happens a lot. A player does well against a couple of the top 6 sides, people label them as fixture-proof. We then find out later on in the season that just wasn't true at all. And to be fair, Mitrovic is just no more fixture-proof than anyone else. Harder fixtures will be harder to get points, easier fixtures will be easier. That's always been the same, right? He's not as likely to get points against Spurs and Chelsea as he is against Nottingham Forest and Bournemouth. We should all be able to agree on that. It doesn't mean that he's a bad option. I'm just saying he's not fixture-proof, right? Just like Mo Salah, Erling Haaland, Harry Kane are also not completely fixture-proof, okay? Fixtures matter. But that doesn't mean that Mitrovic isn't a good option. He's only 6.7 million at the moment. That price will continue to rise as he continues to get goals. He's already got 5. Could have been 6 if he scored the penalty against Wolves. He obviously has penalties as well, which is great. He's going to start every game, and he's going to play 90 minutes in most games. And if you think about the options at 6.7 million or below, from an attacking perspective, so midfielders or forwards, there aren't too many better options than him that have all of those things, right? Nailed on 90 minutes penalties. Like Martinelli is probably the one that springs to mind, but their fixtures are going to turn soon. You got Zaha, he's a little bit more expensive. Tony is more expensive as well. You know, Gross in midfield for Brighton, he's probably not as good an option as Mitrovic, although he is obviously a lot cheaper as well. So I don't begrudge anyone bringing him in, because I think you can just put him in, and I think set and forget is a better label for him than fixture proof. You can just put him in because you know he's going to play, and then you just hope that he gets some points. But even if you look back at the game so far, so Wolves, okay, he could have got the penalty, but outside of that didn't get anything else, right? So no open play goals. Liverpool did really well Obviously, got the header up against Trent, got the penalty as well. We know they're in his locker, so we can't begrudge a player getting points from penalties, right? It's why we picked Salah. It's why we've got Haaland. It's why Kane's great. Scored against Brentford as well. Arsenal away, this is where I find the fixture-proof thing a little bit tricky. I don't think Fulham necessarily caused them a lot of problems, and it was a bit of a mistake from Gabriel. Again, fair play to Mitrovic for being there to win the ball back off him, but in another game, Gabriel just clears that. They don't score, and suddenly we're not hearing things like fixture proof. And even against Brighton, I don't want to take too much away from him, because obviously you've got to be in the right position, but I feel like it was a mishit shot that came to him, so maybe got a little bit fortunate in that game as well. But again, he's always going to be on the pitch to be in those positions, so I do think he's a good option, and from game week 8, I would definitely be looking at him. I just question whether bringing him in for Spurs away and Chelsea at home is the right call. Like, at home, Fulham are going to be a difficult team to play against, so maybe they could do well against Chelsea at home. But at that point then, you've got Fofana, Thiago Silva, Koulibaly. Can they cope with the physical presence of Mitrovic? We'll have to wait and see, but I don't think that's going to be an easy game for Fulham. And having to go away to Spurs is not going to be that easy either. So I don't think fixture proof is the right way to think about him, and I don't think it's necessarily a good use of a transfer this week. If you're wildcard and you want to get on him ahead of the good run that's coming, absolutely fair enough. If you've just got nothing else to do, there's no other real 6.7 million or below attackers that you like, and again, you want to get Mitrovic in for the long haul, then fair enough. But for a lot of you, you'll have different transfers you can make. You can just set yourself up to get him in game week 8 instead. So he's a good set and forget option. I don't necessarily think he's must-buy this week by any stretch. Spurs away is going to be a difficult game. He's definitely not fixture-proof. Nobody is. Not really, anyway. Maybe Haaland this season and Salah. We'll have to wait and see. So like Salah, like Kane, like Mitrovic, Zaha also has one attacking return per game. He's played for and scored for. He, of course, missed the Man City game. And I've been really impressed with how Crystal Palace have done so far. They had one of the hardest starts this season. They've already played Arsenal. Yes, they lost, but they did really well in that game, or they played well at least. Liverpool got the draw, 1-1. And I know they lost 4-2 to Man City, but I mean, who doesn't lose to Man City? And they did at least make it tricky for a little while. So fairly impressed with how Crystal Palace have played. I think Eze is an option for a cheap midfielder if you need one at some point soon. Zaha at 7.1 is also pretty good value. The only question is, have the fixtures turned enough to bring him in? Because on paper, Newcastle away, Man United at home, Brighton away and Chelsea home is maybe not awful, but it's not great either. If you look at the fixtures beyond that from kind of game week 10 onwards, they're pretty good. So we've got Leicester at home, Leeds at home, Leicester away, and then looking at the rest of them then, it's Wolves at home, Everton away, Southampton at home, West Ham away, and then Nottingham Forest away just before the World Cup. So for those of you that are going to wildcard around game weeks 8, 9, 10, Zaha will almost certainly be part of the conversation to have in our squads. Nailed on, going to start every game, get good minutes, and on penalties as well. I think Zaha's one of those players that every time he steps up for a penalty, I'm not necessarily confident. Like, I know he's just missed, but if you've got Kane in your side, or even Salah, and they step up and take a penalty, you're fairly confident it's going in. I think if I had Zaha in my side, I would be a little bit worried, but it is another string to his bow to have those penalties in his locker. I don't think those fixtures from game week 6 to 9 are that great. I think ideally you do wait until later on to bring him in. But what I will say, if you're in the market for a 7.1 or below midfielder, I don't think there's too many other options. And I think if I had a slot to fill, I wouldn't be afraid of putting Zaha in even with those fixtures. Because you look at the list, Martinelli we talked about a lot. At this point, most people who are ever going to own Martinelli probably already own him. And from game week 9, the fixtures turn a little bit anyway. Rodrigo's just got injured. Grealish has been injured. Bernardo Silva for me is just not an option. If we're looking at kind of 7.5 and below. Sancho possibly, but I don't know if I would trust him over Zaha. And also with Antony in the side now, minutes are going to be an issue with kind of Rashford, Elanga and Sancho all kind of playing for one spot. Trossard at 6.5 could be okay. Gross is someone that I already own. He's a lot cheaper, and if you're looking for someone around that price, he's still a good player. But ultimately, there's just not enough other options. Like Sinistera could be decent, St. Maximin when he's fit. But all of these players are either not fully fit or they're just coming back from injury or they just don't have the fixtures either. So it's one of those situations where preferably I wouldn't be bringing Zaha in with that fixture list. But it's not that bad. And for 7.1, there's not too many other options. So 232,000 managers have already transferred him in. I think he's a pretty good buy right now. So I fully get why a lot of Kevin De Bruyne owners are frustrated. It's disappointing to miss one of the easiest games of the season. They've put 6 past Forest. He's only played 21 minutes, no attacking returns, and so over 146,000 managers have already sold him. But I feel like it's a similar situation to Harry Kane, that you probably have to keep him this week. We've seen some rotation midweek, and now a lot of us are worried that those players that played might not necessarily play at the weekend. With De Bruyne, you don't really have that worry. Because he's only played 21 minutes against Forest, he's almost certainly going to play against Aston Villa, and that is a pretty good fixture right now. They are not playing well at all. Gerrard's under huge pressure already. Arsenal could have scored more goals, and if they can score more goals, and to be fair, they've been really good so far this season, I think Man City are fully capable of scoring kind of 2 to 3 at least. It would obviously be better if it was a home match. Going away to Villa, not necessarily as easy, but it's still a pretty good match, and the fact you know he's going to play means you probably have to keep him. Now, you know my kind of general thoughts on De Bruyne if you've been watching my videos. I don't think he's a great premium option compared to the likes of Salah, Haaland and Kane, who are all pretty much nailed on. I know there's some worries about Haaland's starts over the next few weeks, but when he does play, we can see the damage that he's done. Whereas with De Bruyne, he's much more likely to get you an assist than a goal. I've spoken about this a lot, right? And at 12.2 million, I just don't think he's worth it. But in a lot of scenarios, he probably is worth keeping this week before you move him on. I think it ultimately depends on what your move is. If you're looking to do De Bruyne to Salah, I think that's a pretty good move even this week, because despite Salah playing midweek, we know he's pretty much going to start the weekend. It's also the early kickoff on Saturday, so we'll probably get some early team news. If you're thinking of doing De Bruyne to Haaland, I would be tempted, just because of that slight doubt about round whether Haaland starts, to just hold off on the move. I know people are going to start saying things like, you know, Haaland off the bench for 20 minutes, he's absolutely fine, he could easily get a couple of goals. Realistically, he's going to come off the bench for 10 to 20 minutes and probably not score at all in a lot of games when that does happen. So I think for this week, you hold off on that move. But from next week, you've got to find a way to get Haaland or Salah in instead of De Bruyne, in my opinion. Maybe even Harry Kane. I just think they're all better options. So Saliba is still proven a popular entry into the Arsenal defence. Only 4.7 million, so nice and cheap. Over 150,000 transfers in already. But I would question whether this is a good week to bring him in, right? Man United away. Whatever you think about Man United, whatever they do against Leicester tonight, because I am recording it before that game, going to Old Trafford is not going to be easy. We saw what Man United did against Liverpool. They could do that to Arsenal as well. Now, it's not really about winning the game, right? You can have the opinion that Arsenal are going to go to Old Trafford and win. That could happen. Arsenal have been brilliant so far this season, but I think the chances of a clean sheet are quite low. Then you look at the rest of the fixtures, Game Week 9, Game Week 10, possibly wild cards around that point anyway, but they are not easy fixtures to keep a clean sheet. Then you're down to just Everton at home, Brentford away. Now, there could be 1 or 2 clean sheets there, and because he's so cheap, because the Arsenal defence is so good, he might not be a bad option, but I would question whether he's the best option to bring in this week, especially if you're going to wildcard around Game Week 9 anyway. Trippier, for example, if you've got a little bit more money to spend for Newcastle, their fixtures are pretty good. They defended quite well, considering they were missing a few players last night against Liverpool. They defended pretty well, so I wouldn't really worry about going for them either. So Trippier is a nice option. Or if you want someone around the same price as Saliba, you got Brighton defenders. Lewis Dunk, I think, is 4.6. Estupiñán is 4.5. They've got Leicester at home this week, which I would argue is better than Man United away. Yes, the Brighton defence might not be quite as good as Arsenal, but they're still pretty decent. Then it's Bournemouth away, maybe a clean sheet there, and then Crystal Palace at home. Now, we've just discussed, obviously, Zaha being a good option. He will cause them problems, but again, I do rate that Brighton defence quite highly, and I would argue their next 3 fixtures are slightly better than Arsenal's next 3 fixtures. Then they also run into some tricky games. They actually play Liverpool away and Spurs at home in Game Weeks 9 and 10, so it's not like they're massively better long-term options, but for those of you that are maybe looking wildcarding around Game Week 9, I think I would just about back a Brighton defender over an Arsenal defender for the next few weeks. Now, it depends when you're going to play them. So I have Gabriel, for example. I'm probably going to bench him this week and then play him against Everton at home, because I do think that's a really nice fixture for the Arsenal defence. But if you're only getting on them now and you have to play them this week, that's a little bit of a different scenario. So just be careful about that. There are a couple of other nice options. Wouldn't begrudge anyone getting Saliba. The Arsenal defence has been great so far this year, but it is going to get a bit trickier over the next 5 weeks to get those clean sheets, I would say. So there we go. Hopefully you enjoyed that video and found it useful. If you did, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. Leave me a comment below. Let me know what you think of all the players that I've mentioned. If you're a Harry Kane owner, are you going to Haaland this week? Is that what Harry Kane owners should be doing? Or should they just wait out the Fulham at home game and then see what happens? Similar situation with Kevin De Bruyne as well. So make sure you leave a comment below. If there's anything I've missed, I'll try and cover it in the game week preview later on. I know there's going to be a lot of questions about Rodrigo, for example, so I'll go through all the best options around that price as well. So plenty more to discuss before Saturday's deadline. We'll have team selection tomorrow, deadline stream on Saturday as well. So make sure to look forward to all of that. Give this video a like, hit that subscribe button, and I'll catch you again soon.